Good evening. I would like to call to order the April 20th, 2020 meeting of the Statesville City Council. Before we have the invocation, I would like to indicate that item 2 on the consent agenda has been removed. And with that change, is there a motion that we adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second to do so. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And before we have, thank you, passes unanimously. Before we have the invocation and pledge, I'd like to let the citizens know that you can see that Mr. Morgan, Mr. Jap Johnson, Mr. Stafford, and Mr. Foster are up front. Ms. Allison, Mr. Steve Johnson, and David Jones are in the audience, and Ms. Lawton is on the phone. So we are all present and will conduct business that way. We are also live streaming our meeting for the first time, and that can be found at statesvillenc.net/live. And so there are some good things coming out of the pandemic, and one is that we've got our somewhat flawed equipment. Our crack staff and our crack consultants have made it possible for us to do that. So we thank them very much for their efforts in getting us up to speed. So if you would please rise with me. And I think tonight I would say to the community that while we might have different opinions on the magnitude of the COVID-19, we certainly don't have any difference of opinion on our desire for the health and safety of our citizens and a desire that we get back to some sort of economic stability and normalcy as soon as possible. So with those thoughts in mind and our thoughts and prayers toward those that have succumbed to the disease or are sick, and also our unwavering thanks to our healthcare workers and our city staff and others throughout the community who have found ways to do extremely good things for other people during this virus. Let us together, in our own way, in a moment of silence, remember the situation that we're in now. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Madam Clerk, did we have any folks that sent in public comments?
I received 3 phone calls, people that thought that the Vance PO items were going to be on here to vote on, and but that was it. I had no public comment.
All right. So, and no one, Ron, and I forgot to mention that Mr. Smith, our city manager, of course, is here, and he's in the audience as well. All right, thank you. To that end, there's been a lot of conversation about how we will conduct our upcoming meetings. And we have a lot of things on our plate, economic development, planning matters, public works matters, the whole gamut. So we can't just stop as a result. And we understand that public hearings, when they're contested, will take longer than they would if everybody were present. But we're going to trudge forward, and Mr. Smith and I were talking today about taking those in order and kind of gauging what would be a reasonable length meeting to have and try to get through those as expeditiously as we can. We are not going to take the attitude that we're going to just stop until this is over, because that may be some time and there may be different aspects of how over will be. So we're going to balance our need to move the city forward with the public's right to participate in the process, and we're going to be mindful of that. And I would say to the other members of the council and to the citizens, if you ever believe that we're not properly balancing that, all you have to do is let any of us know, let the manager know, and we'll try to modify that. But we're going to continue to be as open and transparent and forthright as we can but we just cannot slow the wheels of progress down in our community. There are a lot of good things happening. There are, I signed today an economic incentive package that we granted to a company a couple months ago, and they're full steam ahead getting ready to spend $7 million in Statesville. So we're going to continue to do that, and I anticipate that we'll have a couple of public hearings on our May 4th agenda. So be prepared for that, and community, be prepared to find out the ways that you can participate in a way that's satisfactory to you but also doesn't impede our ability to go forward. There are two items on the consent agenda. The first is to consider approving the March 2nd, 2020 pre-agenda and council meeting minutes and the March 16th, 2020 council meeting minutes. Are there any adjustments to those minutes? If not, is there a motion that those minutes be approved?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Johnson, a second by Mr. Foster and Mr. Morgan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Or any opposed? Oh, I'm sorry, we're going to do this by the consent, but anyway, we'll get through it. All right. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. And then the other thing on the consent agenda is to consider approving work authorization number 12 for engineering consulting services by Parish and Partners for runway 10-28 safety enhancements. The cost was $85,288. We received a state grant in the amount of $76,759, which is 90%, and the city and county will share the remaining 10%, which would be $4,265 each. You will recall that this is the end of a $9.3 million grant to complete the runway safety area. Any questions about that? If not, is there a motion to approve item C on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Morgan, second by Mr. Foster and Mr. Jap Johnson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? If not, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Amy, I'll try to wait a few seconds. You're on about a 3-second delay, and I'm moving too quickly, but thank you. All right. No, nothing to be sorry about. All right. Item 7 on the regular agenda is to consider a motion to continue the public hearing for the first reading of annexation request AX 20-01, an ordinance to annex properties located adjacent to 110 Vance Poe Road, until the May 4th, 2020 City Council meeting. You'll recall that we had this on our March 2nd meeting, and we continued it until today. And so this is a request to continue it until May 4th. Is there a motion that we do so? Motion by Mr. Steve Johnson. Is there a second? Second, Doris Allison. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Or any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And item 8 is to consider a motion to continue the public hearing for the first reading of a rezoning request, ZC 20-01, for properties located adjacent to 110 Vance Poe Road, from Iredell County Community Business to R8MF, Medium Density Multifamily Residential Conditional Use, and that's also until the May 4th, 2020 City Council meeting. Any questions about that? If not, is there a motion to continue that public hearing?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Mr. Stafford. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? If not, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you. You'll see numerous boards and commissions reports in there. Brenda's been busy. That's another plus of the coronavirus up to date. All right, let me bring us up to date on a couple of things real quickly before we go home. Number one is the census. We have had a 48.4% response rate in Statesville. That's self-response. So what that means is that for every 100 cards that the Census Bureau sent out, 48.4 of them have been returned. Yes. Fortunately, that's ahead of the North Carolina self-response, which is 46.6%. Unfortunately, it's 2.1% below our Tract 601 self-response. So the area that we're being most closely compared to is at 50.5%. Folks, please, if you have filled out your census, please talk to your neighbors, your friends, encourage them to complete the census. We have done a lot of things and continue to do a lot of things in the community. We have been involved with the schools, the Council on Aging, the Statesville Housing Authority, the Hispanic community. We're on our Facebook page. We have a separate census site on our website that will give you instructions on how to complete the form. We're sharing information on our weekly radio program. We're announcing this on our call-outs, and we've identified a staff person to do the follow-ups. I know all the people in this room understand it, and I hope the community will understand. I think I heard today it's $1.5 trillion per year that's given out by the federal government based on population. And the last calculation I saw is that means $2,500 for each Statesvillian. So for each Statesvillian who fails to respond, that's $2,500 per citizen per year. And just to give you an indication as an individual, let's see. I was trying to figure out how much that would, well, that would, if we underreport by 1,000 people in Statesville, which I sort of believe we did 10 years ago, that would be $2.5 million per year. And the way that I analyze that is that would be not quite, but getting close to 1 cent per year on your tax rate. So that's the significance that it means to our community. So I encourage you, and we're going to keep encouraging you, and I hope the council members, when they're in their communities, will encourage folks to do that. I was telling Nancy before the meeting, I had a constituent call probably Friday, and it went very well. The lady was real sweet. I didn't know her, and when it was over, and I said, "Ma'am, can I ask you to do me a favor? I've done you a favor, can you do me a favor?" And I said, "What I'd like to ask you to do is to complete your census, and if you've done so, tell one of your neighbors to do that." And she said, "Mayor, thank you, I have completed it, but that's a good idea. When I'm out in my neighborhood today walking, I'll tell anybody that I see to complete their form." So I encourage everybody to do that. And it's going to seem ad nauseum, but that's very, very important, and means a lot to our community, and means a lot to our county as well. And finally, and I think I'm correct, because I think I bumped into a Civic Center employee today who said he was working in Parks and Recreation. So during this time, what we have done, the manager and his senior administrative team, his department heads, have found a way that we can take people from departments that maybe are a little slack right now, like the Civic Center, like maybe some other areas, the airport, and put them to use in other areas of the city that could use an additional hand at this point. So I commend the manager for doing that, and I think you're looking at that on a daily basis, and we're trying not to furlough or downsize at all at this point. So if any of the members of the city council or any folks listening today have some ideas about how we could deploy our current staff for projects within our community, we'll be happy to consider those as well. All right, and I think, Nancy, how did it go? It worked? Good. All right, so the good thing is this format is going to work, and when we have to retain this format, but we have to keep going, we know that the acoustics and the sound will work. And I guess what we'll do is we'll let the four that sat in the audience sit at the table, or however you want to do it in the future, but we'll work it out. I appreciate everybody's patience and indulgence, and I will entertain a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Motions and second, third. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. We lost her.
Amy? All right. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.